Well, hi there. Welcome to Liberty.me Live, subtitled Free Association. I'm Lucy Steigerwald. That's Sheldon Richman over yonder. And you know us from many exciting previous podcasts that start off with me in this bathroom and Sheldon in his nondescript California room. Today, I guess Sheldon doesn't have an article to talk up all fancy like, so we're going to wing it more than usual, but we're fantastic, so I actually think that we can pull it off beautifully. And I think we were going to start off with the horrible accusation that Sheldon levied at me earlier today, which is that I was voting in the Pennsylvania primary today, which is something that will wound me for the rest of my life, truly. No, it's because Facebook had this horrible "Are you voting?" thing, and I wrote LOL no, but I did check in, so all of my friends, I was counted among the people voting, and my mocking did not come into Facebook's algorithms, so I was counted. But it's okay, I was trying to break the system, man.
I thought it said something about how you...
Oh, Lord. Well, I've just been left alone. That's the problem with voting. So I didn't vote today, and I may not vote in November, though I've of late been considering doing what I did in 2008, which was go all the way down to the polls, waste all of that energy, and actually write in none of the above. I have a friend who convinces me that's the thing to do, even if you don't believe in voting, because at least you're saying, hey, all these people are garbage, not, hey, I had something better to do. Now, I do have something better to do. We all do have something better to do than stand in line for electoral politics. But I think he has a point, because there's apathy and then there's apathy. Hey, Sheldon's back.
I got lost. I don't know what happened there.
I was trying to fill the time as best I could.
I'm sure you did fine. I'm sure you did fine. I don't know what I did. Maybe I closed the tab without realizing. Anyway, sorry about that. I hope you weren't talking about me.
Oh, I was gossiping all about you, critiquing you harshly. No. Well, all right. So we were going to talk about voting. I was just, I was talking about voting, rambling a bit.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, we have five primaries today. That's why you could have voted, because you're in Pennsylvania, right?
Well, I could have. If I am, and I could have voted had I been registered a Democrat or a Republican, which is not going to happen. I will say, all the way back in 2008, I almost registered Republican to vote for Ron Paul in the primaries. And I was doing it online, and twice I thought I checked the box that said Republican, and each time I printed it out, it didn't take. And the second time I said, well, the gods do not want me to register Republican. I will accept this. So I registered Libertarian.
The gods are Democrats?
Oh, hell no. I registered Libertarian, and as I told the empty space while you were gone, the only time I've ever voted was in 2008, and I wrote in none of the above for president. My dad for some office, a Libertarian for state attorney general, and that's about it. And I may or may not do the same thing this year. I certainly won't be voting for any actual candidates or anything as silly as that.
Well, let's see. Until, was it 2014? I hadn't voted since 1980. I voted for Ed Clark, Ed Clark, the Libertarian, the Clark Coke ticket. Can I admit that? I did vote. And then I didn't vote after that until, I guess, November of 2014. And why did I do that? Because there were some initiatives that would have legalized alcohol sales. So how can I avoid voting for that? And some other things, questions in that vein. There were ballot questions. I think one was to lengthen term limits shorten term limits, or to vote against lengthening of term limits.
Yeah.
So, it was very confusing. And then when I got there, I realized that a Libertarian running for land commissioner, I think it was. This was in Arkansas, where I no longer am. Was named Elvis D. Presley.
So you got to vote for Elvis D. Presley.
How can I not say I voted for Elvis Presley?
He's only 3 letters away from Elvis A. Presley, and that's very close.
And he did better than the other libertarians on the ticket. He had like twice. He got like 5%. The others are getting like 2% of most.
I think we know why that is.
No, he's not Elvis A. Presley. He's Elvis D. Presley.
It's awfully close.
Close.
I'd give him my vote for that. I would.
Yeah. So I kind of broke my streak and actually did vote for a person. I might have voted for the other libertarians while I was there, but I mainly went to legalize alcohol, which lost.
Oh,
very
Lord.
badly. Very badly. So that cured me of democracy for another 30 years or whatever. I'll vote again in 30 years when
Sounds
I'll be
perfect.
100 years old or so. Anyway, voting. So we have 5 states, and it looks like it's going to be a sweep, unless some surprise, right, for both Clinton and Trump. I don't like to call them by the first names because that implies a familiarity I do not wish to have. So I will not call her Hillary.
Here.
So that's interesting. But the baddest news today, I mean, I shouldn't be totally surprised by this, but it's just, I was hoping it wouldn't happen, was an article about a town hall that Chris Hayes of MSNBC held with Bernie Sanders, where he asked Sanders what he thought of the drone campaign and the kill lists and all that stuff, and he said it's okay with him because he believes it's, quote, largely constitutional. Thanks a lot, Bernie.
I was away. I was actually at a John Kasich town hall, of all places, so I missed the televised thing. But I looked up the transcript after I saw Chris Hayes tweeting about the exchange and wondering if people like us were peeved about it. We are, I think.
Yes.
There was some slight qualification, but it was also sort of a contradictory one because he said, as you say, it was something like largely constitutional. But he also had said a bit above that there was something that suggested that Sanders, I think, said he wanted a narrower AUMF, so to actually legalize the various drone strikes that we could easily argue are not legal, regardless of their lack of morality, that you could argue they're not legal either. So he had like a hint of qualifying the statement, but it was enough of it, it was bad enough that it was bad, certainly.
Yeah, the qualification on the AUMF that I heard, I guess yesterday, was that I think it was CNN, was that he was afraid of an open-ended quagmire, and he still says, and I just think this is cover. People have to say this to sound like they're not total Cheneyites. You have to say, I don't think we should be leading the way with boots on the ground. We should get together a coalition of Muslims. That's like cover, right? That's to cover up the fact you're an interventionist.
Yeah.
You say, I'm not saying we should lead the way or have 500,000 troops there, but we should get a coalition of Muslims together. Notwithstanding the fact that everybody has their own agenda over there, some people don't want to defeat ISIS or Al-Qaeda. They want to defeat Assad or the Kurds. So how do you get a coalition together? Anyway, I have to say, even though I'm not surprised, I'm still disappointed.
Yeah, I would agree with that exactly.
I mean, does that mean that Sanders is not that bright because he could be attacking her really hard, Clinton really hard from the left, or does he know the Democratic electorate better than I do? In which case, to hell with them. If that's what they want to hear, that's what the progressive Bernieites want to hear. That's pretty bad.
Well, I don't think, and I'm guessing here, not being a Democrat or an expert pollster or what have you, but for Sanders to critique Obama's foreign policy, I don't think that would curry him any favors in any corners except this one right here, or a handful of radical leftists, the type who, when I was writing my series on Playboy about how every presidential candidate is the worst, for my Sanders one, I looked into some of the Counterpunch and other sort of very radical sites and some of the critiques that have been levied against Sanders over the years. And he's the type of person that sometimes the Counterpunch radical types hate almost more because they see him as one of their own who went bad, who became the man. And some of them have disliked him since he voted for Kosovo intervention in 1999.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to read that perspective on him, even if the writers are, more leftist than I am.
Well, his voting record is not very good. He's got the one vote against Iraq, but a lot of it is bad.
But his competition is so atrocious, or it's the bizarre blank slate that is occasionally sounding isolationist, not anti-interventionist, but isolationist Donald Trump, who God only knows what he really wants.
Yeah, I mean, look how upset Sanders got so many people at the debate in Brooklyn when he said the word Palestinians that was good, though, wasn't it? In a somewhat sympathetic way. Like, all hell broke loose. He never used the word occupation. Notice. No. He just said it was a disproportionate response, and we should treat them with respect. That was considered outrageous, and Clinton couldn't agree with that.
You can't talk about proportionality when it comes to the U.S. or its very favored allies. Not, he was saying nothing terribly dramatic, simply that, and it's true, if you look at the body counts, there is a disparity. And the word proportionality is to me perfectly sort of moderate and reasonable, or it could be moderate, because simply all you're going to say is, well, I see that these people are attacking these people, and then these people are attacking these people, but boy, these people have been killed a lot more, even if these people have some flashier ways of killing occasionally that the media likes to write about. I mean, I don't know, it's just, that's a whole nother mess of disaster that to talk about proportionality was shocking, surprising, and very nice to hear from Sanders, but...
But it was an extremely moderate statement.
Except from the context, it wasn't.
He didn't mention that Gaza. He didn't mention that Gaza is a prison, surrounded by Israeli military and the Navy, except for the one part that borders Egypt, which is doing Israel's bidding by keeping it sealed, and there's a blockade on it. They let just enough food in to keep them from starving, basically. It's a total mess. And then they go in and bomb the place and destroy homes and killed many civilians and a lot of children. Yet all he can say is, and that brings this, the roof down on him. It was disproportionate, and the Palestinians deserve respect. It would be nice if he would mention that a lot of the people living in Gaza are refugees or children of refugees or grandchildren of refugees from people who were driven out of those nearby Israeli villages. They were once Arab villages, Palestinian Arab villages, and they were driven out in '48 into Gaza. That's why they're in Gaza. So that just shows you the curve you have to mark.
It's not that long ago. It's not like we're talking about, the horrors of myriad other things that other nation states did. The thing about Israel is that was just a second ago. There are plenty of people still around, and there are more children still around who suffered from that.
Well, there are people still carrying keys to their homes in their pocket, homes that have long been either demolished or are now lived in by Israelis. So anyway, that just shows you the curve you have to mark on. You have to mark on a huge steep curve to judge Sanders, but this accepting of the drones is, I think, just beyond all reason now.
I find that strange because I'm gonna backpedal from my earlier statement a little bit. It's more of a risk for him to say even the relatively mild statement about the Palestinians for mainstream acceptance. That, to me, I think that's almost more risky for his success than to have critiqued the drone program more than he did. And the fact that he pushed a little on the Palestinians and didn't really on the drone program is interesting. I almost feel like that does reveal something about him and what he does actually believe.
Yeah.
Which maybe that drones are acceptable.
It makes you long for Kucinich, doesn't it?
Good old Kucinich.
Or even Ralph Nader. I mean, Ralph Nader was a good critic of the foreign policy for all the bad stuff he's has to say on domestic policy. But although on the other hand, he and Ron Paul nearly teamed up in an effort to fight corporatism. So that I remember seeing both of them on CNN back in, I don't know, 2012, I guess it was, with Wolf Blitzer trying to get them to fight, and they wouldn't take the bait. Neither one of them would take the bait and say, no, we're here talking about corporatism. We're both against that, and war. No, it was fantastic.
That's awesome.
So, okay, so you're in the League of Non-Voters. Glad to hear that.
Now, I don't know. I don't want to go down fully this topic, but do you think that voting... I must confess that I am rather mean, not mean, a little bit mean, to libertarians I know who are going to actually vote against either Trump or Hillary, because it bothers me equally. Because yes, their one vote will do nothing. But to me, it's speech. And to ever go out and spend an hour or two so that you can officially sign off on Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, but definitely Hillary Clinton, that's not, like, I almost feel like the least I can ask of fellow libertarians is to not go vote for fucking Hillary Clinton. But some of them are going to do it. And I don't think that voting is inherently aggression. I don't support it per se, but I think it certainly can be defendable pragmatically. You know, voting for a referendum of some kind that's obviously going to do something good, I think that's fine.
Like legalizing alcohol.
Right, exactly. I think that's fine. I really think the least we can do is not actually pick one of the two idiots that we'll be left with after the conventions. I really do.
So these people you're talking about are going to vote for Hillary Clinton because as a vote against Trump? That's the idea. I've
had some squabbles, some online squabbles with a few of them.
Well, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton as a way to vote against Trump, and then I'm going to vote for Trump as a way to vote against Hillary Clinton.
Someone, I will not mention his name, but he's a libertarian, was explaining how he once voted twice many decades ago in California. So if you can pull it off, why not? My brother on Facebook today was offering to sell his vote. But
can you get in trouble for that?
Oh, absolutely, but I don't think he's actually registered anyway. I think he was just staying...
Oh, he's a fraud.
Yeah. So he's a double fraud.
Didn't somebody once try to sell their vote on eBay, and they warned the person that you can't do. You know, you better not do that. Why can't you sell your vote? I don't get it. I thought we live in a capitalist country.
You just can't put it on eBay because then they'll find it. But I mean, you can. It's
kind of odd. I remember thinking about it when this story made the news, because let's say you were buying the vote. How would you know the person did what you wanted?
You don't.
You can't prove it. So if I pay you to go vote for a person I like, so that way I get kind of 2 votes for that person, maybe you don't even go and vote. I don't know, and you get the money.
You could request a cell phone photo of a ballot. I know you're not really supposed to do that in most places, but you can pull it off. So maybe that's part of the deal when you make the contract for this particular sale.
Is, who would buy? Since one vote doesn't make any difference, why would you spend any money on someone else's vote? Unless you lived in like a 2 or 3 person town.
Yeah.
Might be kind of obvious then. That doesn't make any sense.
I believe it was in 2012 when Thaddeus Russell voted for Anwar al-Awlaki's 16-year-old son.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, that was pretty. That was a good choice.
Was he already dead?
He was, yes. I mean,
well, that's 2 reasons he couldn't have taken office. He was too young, and he wasn't going to get any older. Sad.
Sad.
I wonder if does Bernie Sanders support that droning?
Yeah, well, that's the one where I'm sorry, they've never actually answered for that because we didn't mean to, but our program makes very few errors and is super great, but we didn't mean to do that one, I guess.
Yeah, except for the odd, hospital wedding. We're not doing too bad.
Right. Sigh.
Well, yeah, David Hagelin was saying you'd have to buy a bunch of votes, but you'd have the same problem. You wouldn't know that those people were voting
Just
So what
make
do you
them
do?
take a
Sue them
picture.
if your candidate didn't win, you then can sue them because you're supposed to win from playing all the votes.
This is what would happen
Make
in
them take a picture.
anarcho-capitalism land. Would be a lawless place of buying and selling votes. Would be
You
horrible.
can't sell kidneys or votes. What's this country coming to?
This is not the America I grew up in. Yes, it is.
It's a capitalist society. So let's see. What has Trump said lately? Well, Trump actually said something, more or less good lately when he condemned the North Carolina law regarding bathrooms.
That was a weird
which is
segue.
a pretty ridiculous law because, well, we're talking about the election.
Yeah, no, it's just
and you're in the
Trump is just everywhere.
You're sitting in the bathroom authoritatively. So tell us about bathrooms.
I wish I had in front of me exactly what Trump said, but that was interesting though, wasn't it? Because he basically made as eloquently as he is capable of being, and for all that entails, basically said this is kind of an imaginary problem, and we're looking for laws like that will fix this imaginary problem, and just everyone relax, like don't even worry about it. And
no, it has to do with birth certificates. So is the implication of this law that you have to walk around with your birth certificate, in other words, with your papers? And so before going into the bathroom, you have to then produce your birth certificate, and then you'd have to show some other things.
How many butch lesbians or any effeminate males will be stared at intently, like looking for the signal that they might be trans? What God? The idea that what we need in this world is another reason to call the cops, to get I think of the death of Eric Garner and 5 million other tiny little laws that are just an inroad for the authorities to mess with people, or even the horror stories that that woman who writes on Reason now with the free range kids woman, she'll write about stories where a 12-year-old was left in a car for 30 minutes with the windows open and someone called the police because, my God, that child was in danger. I mean, this law, even without the hateful sort of propulsion behind it, is like another reason for to bring not neighborly niceness and caring into our lives, but the kind of, I'm gonna call 911 because that might be a man over there, and we need to get. But it's like the can I speak to the manager, call the cops type of. It's another thing to add to things. Literally, the last thing we need in this country is yet another thing to do that. One that targets one of our most oppressed minorities.
I'm glad you see the importance of this.
I got mad. I got all mad there.
Now the other thing so Cruz of course immediately jumped on Trump, and then within hours they had a commercial. I'm amazed at how fast they produce commercials, showing the clip of him of Trump saying he didn't see what was the big deal. Doesn't seem to be happening. This problem. It's a solution in search of a problem, basically. Exactly. So leave it to Cruz to jump on him. But the one thing that upset Trump the other day, I heard him say he called one of his credit card companies. He quickly assured us that it wasn't that he had trouble with a credit card, but he really wanted to see if the person answering the phone was outside of the United States. And sure enough, the person was in India.
Oh my God!
He just was appalled by this, he was appalled by it, or the character he plays on the stump was appalled by it. Paul Manafort says he's playing a part, so we really don't know if it's him or his character.
I think he is to some extent. I always think there's got to be enough truth to these sorts of caricatures. I think that the person can pull it off, not having been, a trained actor. But I think it's an exaggeration, certainly, whatever that actually means.
And that doesn't surprise me. No, I think it could all be really a scam. I think this all started maybe with a bet with his wife. Right? He said, I'll bet you I can get the Republican nomination. She said, oh, come on, you're full of it. Okay, what's the bet? They made some bet. Your supply of Trump steaks or something. And Trump vodka. And so now, that's why occasionally it looks like he's a little bit worried that he might win, that he doesn't really want this. I think it's a joke. I think it's a bet.
There was that one article by the woman who worked on the campaign for a year, and she basically said he doesn't want to win. He just wanted to prove that he could do well, and like he actually has no idea how to bail out now. I kind of buy that. As much as I've flirted with the conspiracy theory that like he's legit trying to help Hillary Clinton, which he probably will help her in the long run, I do buy that this was an ego trip that succeeded beyond his wildest dreams and all of ours. I do. Because
and I think he wanted to test. He wanted to test the theory for himself, and I think actually there was an article talking about a meeting he had with Republicans, maybe 2 years ago, within the last 2 years, not that long ago, where he said, here's what I could do. First of all, I could make sure I get free media and never really have to buy any commercial time, which is, he basically has done that. He's bought some TV, radio commercials. I don't know if he's done much TV. So he's really existed on the basis of, live coverage by CNN and the others, and the cable, the other cable channels. So, and then I think part of it was, I can tap in what outrages a lot of people, and really connect. So it's these kind of two things, and if that's really true, then it looks like he's pulling it off. And, the odds are he'll end up with the nomination. I mean, I don't know, maybe he'll even get the magic number before he goes to the convention in Cleveland. But we'll see.
I may end up going to the convention, so I'm hoping for total chaos. I'm hoping for fist fights on the convention floor, If whoever's going to get it, I want them to fight for it. Actually,
it could be pretty nasty. Yeah.
Yeah. Jesse Walker had.
And, here's another thing Trump said. I think today, or maybe tweeted this. He said that Sanders has been treated very unfairly by the Democratic Party, and therefore he should consider running an independent race after the conventions. Now, does that show that he's a little worried? Because obviously that would hurt Hillary Clinton. And help him assuming he's the nominee. So what's going on there? Why is he planning that thought?
Well, in the past few months, or at least weeks, Trump and some of the Trump supporters that I talked to at the Pittsburgh rally 2 weeks ago, several of them mentioned Sanders, and they have put him in sort of the similar boat as Trump, not just because they both have hideous trade policies, but because they see them both as being screwed over by the mainstream people who are doing everything they can to stop them. And there's a kernel of truth to that, but I think it's more complicated than that, particularly since Donald Trump is somehow winning, But as you put it so nicely, the aggrieved nation shtick, Trump is still winning, and he still feels put upon and deprived, even though he's leading, no one thought it possible.
And there's a counterpart with the Sanders campaign. One of Sanders' major themes is that the political system is corrupt because it takes a huge amount of money and super PACs and money from Wall Street to mount a campaign, except for in his case. I mean, he's gotten this far, if he's telling the truth, on average $27 contributions, no super PAC, no money from no money from Wall Street, isn't he? Or as he likes to say, Wall Street. He throws an S in there. Wall Street. Isn't he a walking refutation? Self-refutation?
Well,
he shouldn't be
when he fails,
have a campaign. What?
Maybe when he fails, he won't be. I mean, he can get so far, no farther, perhaps, is what he can say. And I think that may be true, actually, in the end. I think Sanders really is the Ron Paul.
He's not running out of money, though. The problem is not that he's running out of money.
Yeah.
The problem is, he's not getting votes from certain Democratic constituencies, which are more favorable to Clinton.
Yeah.
And I don't think he can say it's money. He's never once said, I can't do something because I can't afford it. He talks about all the money he's raising.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems like a walking refutation. And I always think it's very odd. I look askance at anyone who thinks the world would all be right, or certainly take a huge step in the direction of rightness if only Citizens United were overturned.
Oh God, people are obsessed with that. Absolutely obsessed.
I know it. It doesn't even make sense because people, like the Kochs, for example. We'll have to talk about the Kochs because there's that remark Charles Koch made about Hillary Clinton. But the Kochs are spending their own personal money, and their company's not even a publicly traded corporation. So it has nothing to do with Citizens United. Citizens United says corporate entities, which includes unions, by the way, can give money to independent efforts to help or hurt a candidate. It has nothing to do with people giving their private money to a PAC. The other thing is super PACs are completely a creature of campaign finance reform, right? In the old days, people gave to parties or to candidates, but then they started putting huge limits on them, and as a reform. So every reform has led to something that the reformers hate, and then say, "Oh, we need a new reform to combat what the old reform created," and it's just one thing after another.
Boy, that sounds like government.
Why weren't there super PACs, in the 70s or the 80s? Because the stuff hadn't all kicked in yet. It begins in the 80s. The limits on finance. That's why David Koch was on the campaign, on the ticket with Clark in 1980 for the Libertarians, because that way he could spend his own money and therefore get around the limit. Anyone else could only give $1,000. And Eugene McCarthy, everybody remembers Gene McCarthy, right? Who, while he never won anything, he drove LBJ from the campaign in 1968 because of the blow. I think McCarthy came in second, the real blow to Johnson. Johnson figured Vietnam was too much of a headache for him, and he decided to just get out. McCarthy did that because he was able to raise money from 3 wealthy people. In '68, we didn't have all the campaign finance laws that came in beginning in the '70s after the Nixon stuff. There were still limits. Back in Teddy Roosevelt's day, they outlawed corporations giving money directly to candidates. So that had already long been the law. But he could go to 3 people, individuals who had personal fortunes, who gave him money. And he used to say, and his people used to say later, that if the campaign finance laws had been in effect in 1968, we never would have heard of McCarthy. He would have had trouble raising enough money against an incumbent president like Johnson, $1,000 at a time. So we should learn something from that. This is all just incumbent protection, which we fully know. Think about where Citizens United came from. Hillary should never open her mouth about. Clinton should never open her mouth about Citizens United because it's self-serving. No one will remind her of this. It's self-serving. The Citizens United came out of a case where, within a certain time of her, I guess her re-election campaign, is it, for the Senate, this group, Citizens United, wanted to put an ad on TV, I guess in New York, advertising a documentary that's critical of Hillary Clinton. But she went into court and said this violates campaign finance because you're not allowed to put statements, you're not allowed to advertise against a candidate within 30 or whatever it is, 60 days of an election. I mean, it's stupid,
Which is
rules
a
that violate free
bizarre
speech.
idea. Yeah.
It violates free speech. It protects incumbents.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court eventually said corporate entities can't. I guess this was an incorporate. It wasn't a corporation in the sense of a business corporation. It was like a non-profit corporation. Public interest kind of public corporation. It was stopped. I think it was stopped at the time. They took the case. Then they sued. Eventually, gets to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it was a violation, I guess, of the First Amendment to stop a corporate entity from giving to an independent effort. He still can't give to a party or to a candidate. So it was all about her. She tried to stop criticism of herself. And she goes and talks about how bad Citizens United is. We got to get it overturned. We got to put the right people in the Supreme Court. So, typical corruption.
Oh yeah, and the people who, again, many of them so well-meaning, I don't know. You just summed up nicely the eternal government thing, which is you have the problem and then you you regulate it into something worse and repeat literally until the end of time.
Right, and they never undo what created what they consider a new problem. And it seems to me much more straightforward if you're concerned about corruption, in campaign finance. It seems much more transparent to let people give money directly to the parties and the candidates. Mm-hmm. First of all, it seems to me that just the competition will push candidates to reveal who their candidates are, their campaign finance, their donors are, because the opponent can say, hey, show me your list. So here's my list. Let's see who's backing you. You can make a campaign issue of that. Mm-hmm. But if it's one step removed in these super PACs, which by law are not allowed to coordinate with the campaigns, then the candidate has sort of deniability. It seems to me if you were one of these goo-goo types, good government types, you'd want it all open with money going directly to candidates and parties. That's exactly what they outlawed, or at least heavily limited.
That's true, and I'm trying to think. I'd never thought of it in terms of they actually sort of make it even more opaque in terms of like I think it's sold as well they're separate, so it's not they're not really influencing the campaign with anything directly. But it reminds me of the argument. I was reading some Federalist Papers for a Cato forum I did, and when they're debating whether the executive should be one person or they should try two people like Rome did for a while. And Hamilton at some point argues that it's actually, and you think of him as being sort of foolishly pro-government sometimes, but he's arguing that one guy, you know who done it when it's one guy, and they can't, they can't point to the committee and say, well, it wasn't my fault, it was the committee over here. So there's this argument that one person in power can actually bring a certain amount of clarity. And that, I don't know, I'm just reminded of that when you mentioned that with the money. And I think having the money more direct in that way could hardly be worse than the way it's set up now, at least.
Yeah. Well, that Hamilton point is not obviously not a crazy point, which I think is what you're saying. There's a great essay of Leonard Read's, which I always liked, one of my favorites, called "On That Day, Lies Began." And it's about committees and about how the individuals feel sort of absolved of responsibility because we acted as a committee. That's kind of the same point. People can kind of find there's some sort of shelter in that. They're one step removed, even if they voted for the decision. Look up the essay, anybody who's watching this, because it's worth reading.
That's almost reminds me, again, this is a tangential sort of podcast, but we knew it would be when we started. Almost bystander effect-esque, and it's also reminds me of the limited stuff I know of Hoppe, who obviously I have some serious problems with, and you know many of his things. But when I was first introduced to the initial sort of argument against democracy that he has, and how it's harder to get rid of, and how sort of the state's legitimacy rests in everyone in this insidious way, I think that's entirely true, and I think that's just, I don't think the solution is a monarchy or forcibly removing undesirables or anything like that. But I mean, that is the danger of democracy. And when the cumulative evil is being endorsed by, say, 51% of the people who bothered to come out and vote, how culpable are they about various things? Should we be blocking the roads so they pay attention, etc.? Just brings up a million depressing questions, I think.
No, agreed. No, and this can be interesting because it can, it doesn't mean you come up with a solution you like, but it can shed light on things. There's a book by a George Mason University law professor named Frank Buckley, called The Once and Future King. So he's a historian also of the Constitutional Convention. I've only begun to read the book. It's a book I want to read. And an argument he's making is that there are advantages to a parliamentary system. And he compared parliamentary systems to presidential systems around the world and tried to get some measurement of the degree of freedom. I think he thinks maybe the parliamentary systems are slightly better off. But here's one thing I've long thought, even before I heard of this book, but he confirms it. The obvious point is that a parliamentary system separates the head of state from the head of government. Mm-hmm. And the American system, the presidential system, does not do that. So we combine that, which means any mystique and awe that people have for the state, which they shouldn't have, but they do, is also directed at the president. Mm-hmm. In England, it's directed at the Queen. And therefore, the prime minister is just seen as another politician. Okay, he's not just another politician, he's the leader of the party, but that's all he is. He's the leader of the party. They can yell at him. They have that question and answer session. What is it, every week in Parliament? You can watch it, I guess.
Yeah, but if you call him Dodgy Dave, they kick you out.
Okay, right. There are limits. There's some limits of decorum, but you could ask very hard questions of him. Mm-hmm. And so the other party can do that, or even opposition within the party can do that. We have nothing like that.
We don't.
First of all, we know that the media doesn't ever ask a president tough questions. They're in awe of him, and he can't get called before Congress or before a hearing. Cabinet members can, it's true, and they can sometimes rough up a cabinet member, but it's not the same thing.
Yeah.
You can't call the president. It's considered a violation of the separation of powers, which means, separation of powers and checks and balances are a bit in conflict, aren't they? If you have separate powers, how do you really have checks and balances? I mean, I always thought those two things didn't fit together very well. So there is an advantage to the president if the president were simply the head of his party and the head of a branch of government, or the head of the government, but not the symbol of the state. So I don't know. Maybe we should be anarcho-monarchists. I think there actually are anarcho-monarchists.
There are.
Or monarcho-libertarians. Just for the sake, so that just as a short-run thing until we get rid of the government, just so that the president doesn't get treated with these kids' gloves like he's some sort of minister or minister in the other sense, or priest or pope.
There are some horrible. I mean, these are important points, but somehow I've seen them turn into sort of anarchists turning into fascists. We need Pinochet, we need secret Liberty death squads until we get things settled. I mean, sometimes it gets a little bad. I will say that during
that's nothing like I said. By the way, Jesse Walker just had an article in Reason on that very subject that you just talked about. A decent article, very good article. Libertarians who flirt with dictatorship on the grounds that we need a good libertarian dictator to go in there and establish liberty and then disappear.
That's Marx. I mean,
well, that's Jesse's point. That's
literally what Marx thought would happen. Well, and as far as I can understand, never explained how it was going to magically happen, ever.
Well, don't forget Hayek, and this is somewhat controversial because there's an argument over interpretation. Hayek seemed a little soft on Pinochet, it's true.
Right, yeah.
But there are some differences, but there's a new paper out by Andrew Farrant and a couple other guys that's fairly, incriminating of Hayek.
Oh, dear.
Not that he was pro-dictatorship, but he just said, something like temporarily giving up democracy in favor of liberty, is a good thing or something like that. But that takes
democracy is not liberty. Those are different.
That's true, and I'm sure Hayek didn't think it was either. But he also understood the public choice arguments against such a thing and how the worst rise to the top and all of that, and it won't be temporary. It may well not be temporary. So I recommend Walker's piece. It's just anybody go to Reason and just scan down their list of recent articles. You'll find it.
If he thought he was doing harm reduction, I think that could perhaps be defended, but I don't know. I don't know enough about it, so I can't speak to that. I will say the comparison with Britain thing that you said was raised at this Cato thing, which I can't be specific about because it was all secret, off the record discussions. So we can all be free. We can all be free to say what we wanted. But I've never really encountered exactly that argument that the monarchy is almost sort of a safety, like a pressure release valve for all of the horrible, nationalist patriot pride and worshipfulness.
Yeah.
And you encountered that a little bit in some of the Federalist Papers that we read as well, and the arguments that a king can actually be superior. And I knew before that kings had been debated, obviously, how powerful should Washington be our new king, but I didn't know that the complexity of the arguments and how sort of modern they are compared to the things libertarians like to overthink today was kind of fascinating. Just prove we've been having the same debates for 300 years.
Yeah, well, I bet that is. Look, political history is very interesting because it's a study in unintended consequences, right? I mean, guys like the aristocrats and noblemen that we would not like at all, unwittingly serve the cause of freedom by fighting a centralized king. History is filled with stories like that. That's the story of the Middle Ages. I mean, while you were at one Liberty Fund thing or talking at a secret colloquium about taking over the world, I was at another one on the other side of town in Washington, and I guess I can be a little more open about it. It wasn't so secretive. We weren't plotting the takeover. We were plotting how to stop you guys from taking over.
Nuh-uh. We were on the same side. We'd better be.
Not tactically, not strategically. We were talking about the life and work of Leonard Liggio, who, of course, was very much interested in the history of the Middle Ages and how liberty came out of the struggles beginning in about the year 1000. And not that anybody intended it, but that's what makes it so fascinating. That markets and law, in the sense of customary law, not state law, but the law, the law merchant and things like that. No one sat down and said, "Let's create a free society." Okay, let's draw up a blueprint. No, there was much more micro and spontaneous, and few people had, probably nobody had a big picture. It was like, how can we trade? How can we trade without being molested by, this or that nobleman or king? And out of that came liberty, and the struggle between church and state, and the king and nobles. That fight caused zones of liberty in which people could operate fairly freely, like in the free cities, and then just all over Europe in those Middle Ages. Those were not dark times. Great. I mean, even the Dark Ages weren't very dark when you think about it. That's a myth. That's sort of an anti-Catholic myth. Not that I'm an apologist for Catholicism, not a Catholic, but a lot of that is anti-Catholicism, right? Because it was pre-Reformation, right. So you have to portray that period as backward and crazy, and no progress whatsoever was made. That's just wrong. But anyway, liberty came out of that without it being anybody's intention. That's the important thing.
Almost like we want to be free. God damn it! Eventually.
Yeah, well, and that's right. Again, at the micro level, people were just trying to eke out freedom and also make their lives better through trade. And they resisted when it was necessary, or they just, sort of got around things more, furtively rather than outright resistance. But there was resistance too. Anyway, I think we got far away from Trump and company.
It was good though. It was a good tangent. We should be proud of ourselves. I think it was.
So I'm not proposing that the libertarians now back monarchy, but I'm just saying there's some advantage to that we don't have, because the president is treated like a king. Remember the outrage when who was the member of Congress who said liar?
Yeah,
the State of the Union address.
The guy with the same name as the husband of the spy.
Oh, that's Joe.
Joe Wilson. Different guy.
Wilson. Yeah, because
but same name.
The statement that elicited that was Obama's claim that illegal aliens wouldn't get health care under Obamacare, I believe. So it was like 2009, 2010, when Obamacare was being debated in Congress. And, that was considered. Now, I realized that in Parliament, if you call Cameron a liar, you said you couldn't call him Dodgy Dave.
Yeah.
If you shout out liar, maybe that's considered beyond the pale there, too. There's some decorum. But you can still be very tough, and they never get a chance. In the U.S. government, there's just no chance to do that.
I mean, if you've ever watched, it went sort of viral 6 or so years ago, gone of YouTube. Daniel Hannan, who is not a member of parliament anymore, but he was, and he was very libertarian friendly, has this 3-minute just smackdown of Gordon Brown on his economic policies, and it's it's in.
Oh, I think I've seen that.
So
yes,
good.
That rings a bell. Hannan, you're right.
It's just, the British, flawless speech of it is also wonderful, but it's so withering. And so it's so good. And we don't have anything close to that here. Not just because our accents are more annoying, but because the setup is completely different. I think that Gene Healy's The Cult of the Presidency is completely essential reading for everyone, honestly.
Yeah, he's good. Gene is great.
Yeah, that book in particular really enlightens, nothing, it wasn't perfect before, and I'm sure there was always somebody ready to worship somebody, but just how much sort of tradition was against the president being this dominant figure. For the Cato thing, there was also some Wilson reading, and you see, just the more you read, the more you see the attitude creeping in. The presidency is what a great man makes of it, and it just got worse and worse, and then that sort of became a baseline. And there are all these horrible tributes and politeness that makes the president very kingly. And
well, don't forget we talked about this 2 weeks ago in connection with my book, which I hesitate to mention because authors are always touting their books, and I don't want to just be another author touting his book. Oh, it's in the other room. I can't hold it up. Imagine I'm holding it up. Article 2 was written with everyone knowing that Washington was going to be the first president.
Right.
And he was revered. Whether he should have been is another question. I think Murray Rothbard had a few things to say about Washington as a tactician. I think he was against guerrilla warfare. Washington was, and like the old-fashioned way where you just lined up and, hey,
it kills fewer civilians, man. I'll take it.
Yeah, it could be. Anyway, so there was a majesty around the presidency, partly because of Washington, and the attitude toward him. So that shaped it. I mean, Jefferson tried to shrink it back a bit. There's a famous story about Jefferson. Walking from the boarding house to his inauguration. So he was less. He was more in the vein of the being against a society of classes and castes, and so he tried to restore some of that. But I think there's always a tinge of it because it's so singled out. The president, as opposed to multiple members of Congress.
Right. That is the danger. You don't have the release valve. You don't have a channel. I mean, maybe if we worship the flag more and just the flag, even that would be better. But that's bad.
At least we don't pledge allegiance to the president.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, God, there's lots to think on there. The Parliament thing was fascinating. I'm afraid I don't know my British politicians very well, but this MP was asking David Cameron a question. Mm-hmm. And he called him Dodgy Dave. Mm. And the sort of moderator person basically said, you may rephrase you may ask that, and you can ask everything in your question except you have to withdraw calling him Dodgy Dave. And he wouldn't do it. And he was asked to do it again. And eventually the guy said, under so-and-so, we're going to have to boot you out for this session. And he left the room.
He actually had to leave.
So apparently the word dodgy is very serious.
Well, maybe you just can't call somebody a name.
Yeah.
I wonder what the rule is. I'll have to ask one of my British friends what the rule is.
But I mean, the Daniel Hannan thing, he says at the end, you're a devalued prime minister of a devalued government. But I guess even that insult is sort of more productive. Dodgy is just
that's not name calling.
Yeah. It was funny, though. I feel like I don't know enough about how it works over there.
But you can still be, without name calling, you can be pretty tough. And I've watched some of those sessions over the years, not very much. Don't get me wrong, I'm not one of those people who has to watch it every week. I think there are Americans who love that or are addicted to that.
It's more interesting than our stuff. There's no denying it.
Yeah, we have nothing like it, especially since the media don't pick up, the cudgel. They don't do it. I mean, look what happens when one of these correspondents or anchor people gets a one-on-one interview with Obama, or look at a press conference. Nobody asks a tough question.
And you also can't sit there and ask. I think part of the problem, to give them maybe some excuse, is that how do you begin to ask the sort of questions that we would want to ask? I mean, you can ask, why did that drone strike happen, blah, blah, blah. But it's harder to ask, why the hell does the DEA keep existing? The sort of like institutional, why does that a thing? It's not even set up to ask that, even if the press was sort of interested in asking those big questions. They don't want to dig most of the time. As I've said, they will take a Snowden-style story when it absolutely drops in their laps. But they don't want to dig and ask, why do we have this? But, they could ask about national security things and that happen every day, and they don't, mostly.
Yeah, because I think they have bought into this idea that they have to be careful about undermining our national security.
And you know what I think part of it actually is as well? Is that it's really fun, in what can be a dangerous way, to be in we're in the press club. And there's something about that feeling that does not encourage you to go for the jugular when it comes to stories and questions.
Funny you should say that, because guess what's coming up? I guess maybe this weekend. The Washington Press Association annual event at the White House.
And I've been there, of course, and it is absolutely awful.
It's disgusting. Here they are partying with power, and the powerful have no hesitation to make fun of things like, remember Bush looking under the couch, the pictures of him looking for the WMD under the couch in the Oval Office, where is that? Or Obama joking that he may have to be, the Jonas brothers better be careful around his daughters because he's got drones. I mean, this is not. Why would you don't joke about that? You shouldn't joke about that.
No, you shouldn't.
I don't find that funny, especially when it's you and the media that every other day is sucking up to you anyway. Partying, right, maybe it's not a taxpayer expense. I don't know who pays for it, but
people have argued that the press is finally letting loose, and they sort of act as if the press every day of the year is like going hard against the president all the time, which is absurd. They're just fancier that day and slightly more pleased with themselves. I mean,
it's just more open. It's more open that they're just part of the in crowd. They're the fourth estate. They're part of the formal.
That's such a bad term.
Oh, it's a terrible term.
I mean, it's not bad because
I think they do. They think of themselves that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what you want. Rather,
they're not adversaries. They're part of. They see themselves as part of the system. They are not adversaries.
Yeah. And it's fun to be in the little press pen and to write things and to try to get questions. But for some reason, that doesn't lead to we're the press and we're against, the politicians and we're tough. Somehow it leads to this symbiotic thing where we're on the road with the politician and we're all in this together, but we're in it with the politician too. I don't know. I've been covering political rallies lately, and I've been in the press pen, and I've gotten more of a taste of sort of the traditional journalist thing. Mm-hmm. And it's really fun in certain ways, and it's very bad for good journalism. And it gives you journalistic camaraderie, but it doesn't give you journalistic camaraderie that encourages you to be hard against the politicians. I don't know. I have to mull this over, but
no, they're all in it together, and I really hate when you hear when reporters are sitting around like in these panel discussions, and they talk about the tough time that politicians have, what they have to go through. That's really bad. That's really bad.
It's probably stressful to be the president. When I think about whether Trump actually wants to win, I think about that. I mean, if someone said, all right, Lucy, you're the president, I'd go, oh God, what do I do? Oh God, this is awful. I have no idea. I mean, you know, it would be like, I understand that there's certain things that are stressful, but I'm sorry, I don't have any sympathy for them. You know, I'm not worried about their health or the fact that their hair turns gray after 4 and then 8 years. I really.
And we're not conscripting them. Well, do you have anything to plug? I see we're past the hour.
That's the problem with the tangent, is that you can just keep going, and there's so many things to yell about. And
well, we'll just pick up where we left off in a fortnight.
Yeah, I'm sure the world will have crumbled even further. Go read Sheldon's work, Free Association blog, Reason.com, Patreon, Anti-War, sometimes Counterpunch. Have I missed one?
No, that's good. Media with conscience. Yeah, media with conscience.
Okay. And I hopefully will get an anti-war thing out this week. Politicians kept coming to my state and bothering me while I was trying to write more important things, and I had to go cover them.
That'll be finished tomorrow.
It will, thankfully. And also, I've been writing a bunch of stuff for Playboy lately.
Great stuff.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's not that easy to Google, but you can always find it on my Twitter, if nowhere else, which is Lucy Stagg. And yeah, read our stuff, because we're good people, especially Sheldon.
Well, don't say that. Don't say especially. Okay.
Well, you have more years of quality work. That's what I mean. That's all.
Well, I appreciate
you got a head start.
Okay, so we will be back here 2 weeks from tonight with who knows
we will
talk about it. Assuming the world's still here, but I think it will be.
All right. Thanks, audience, current and future. And thanks most to the lovely Sheldon. And I will see you in 2 weeks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.